Hello, thanks for joining us today. Today I'm here with Blake Ells, who is the author of Magic City Rock and also the Director of Marketing and Business Development over at Grace Klein Community. Thanks for joining me today, Blake.
Thanks for having me today.
So I read your book and I really loved it, and I'm really excited to talk about it today. And I want to start out by asking, where are you from?
I grew up in North Alabama in a tiny little town called Rogersville. It's about 30 minutes outside of Muscle Shoals proper, near the Tennessee state line. So I spent a lot of my youth in the Muscle Shoals area. Florence to do anything. So I actually published my first book in 2015, The Muscle Shoals Legacy of Fame, about where I grew up in my hometown area and all of that. And at this point, I've actually lived in Birmingham longer than I ever lived there. So I kind of wanted to do something to complement it as kind of an ode to my second hometown of Birmingham.
So, are there any other authors, or I guess any specific films or musicians that inspired you to write about music?
Yeah, well, that's an ever evolving question. There were obviously a lot of people that were writing music when I was like college aged. Folks like Rob Sheffield and Stephen Hyden and some of those guys, and they're still doing it. But that's music journalism, like all journalism right now, is something that is becoming harder to make money off of. So those people that inspired me over the years, there's some of the last greats that do that kind of thing that are standing. I also am related to a couple of people that were deeply involved in the scene in Muscle Shoals. Spooner Oldham, who is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, is a cousin of mine, and so I was familiar with his work early on. Jay Burgess from the Pollies is also a cousin of mine. And so I've spent a lot of time at least learning about the older scene and the newer scene up there. And this undertaking for the Birmingham book was, I guess, kind of my way of trying to learn a little bit more myself and share that at the same time.
Yeah, as someone who's not from Alabama or Birmingham, I've really enjoyed reading Magic City Rock because it kind of, for me, felt familiar. There are people in it that are mentioned and artists that I know of, but bands and artists I had never heard of before. And it was just really cool to read about the Sugar Lalas, who I wasn't familiar with, and I guess Carol Griffin is the owner of Continental Bakery, which I had no idea. So thank you for writing such a cool book. And I kind of wanted to ask you, like, who was your intended audience for your book?
Um, it was oral history. Most of the stuff that I shared in that book came directly from interviews with the people that lived it. It was the audience for the book is an audience that is unaware of how rich the rock and roll history of Birmingham is. I think a lot of times, especially nowadays, people think that the only major mainstream success that we've had with our music scene here was something like St. Paul and the Broken Bones, who had a whole lot of success, and they've been fantastic. But there were a lot of people before them that paved the way throughout the 80s and 90s. And really what I kind of tried to do was draw a straight line from the people that were playing in those bands and ended up producing for folks like St. Paul and the Broken Bones. And, the course of that music history in this town has always gone through a very tight-knit group of people, even over the 3-4 decades that expands.
I also enjoyed, you talking and covering about Cave Nine and interviewing Aaron Hamilton, who we have interviewed here at the library, who of course is the owner of Sanctum Comics and Tattoos down the street. And just a wonderful person. And I was wondering if you could give your take on what you think their lasting effect that they've had on Birmingham's DIY scene, I guess, with the firehouse and.
Yeah, well, honestly, Cave Nine was kind of the genesis of this book. I had done a piece in a music issue for Weld, the former alt weekly here in town, about Cave Nine, which kind of evolved into what that chapter was. It was a completely revised version of that original story. Um, but there were a lot of DIY places in that era, in that I don't know, early 2000s kind of era, and I think the spirit of Cave Nine was something that still carries over today. Whether it was a hardcore show or a punk show or whatever it was a bunch of kids that just wanted to get out of their house and go down and watch a rock and roll show, to the point where people were perfectly happy cleaning up after the show and doing whatever they had to do to keep the place functioning. And that spirit is kind of the spirit of that scene that has honestly kind of changed hands from the guys that started it, that I would call Gen Xers now, to the kids that are carrying it on all the way down to Gen Z, or whatever you want to say now. It's always been an extremely communal scene, where everybody pitched in to do their part to have some fun.
So, in your book, I think it's very evident, your love for the city and the city's music history. If you could give just like, I guess if someone ever asked you to give a statement, like what do you love most about the music in Birmingham, what would you say?
I love that it's a lot more diverse than people think. Obviously this town was built on blues music and jazz music, and those weren't things that I thought I was going to add a lot to the conversation on. I mean, obviously Sun Ra is from Birmingham, and obviously there's so many blues and jazz musicians that played in so many clubs across this town. And first, part of the reason I didn't want to get too much into that is because this was an oral history, and because of what I just said, it was a lot more difficult the further back you go, because it's a lot, there are fewer survivors of those scenes that came prior. It, I find I find one of the most unique things about the music history of this town is that a lot of those clubs, like Tuxedo Junction in Inslee, where blues played in the 40s, later became, halls that punk rock kids were renting out from owners to put on their own propaganda shows and whatever other punk rock shows. And there's kind of a straight line between those things too, between the blues and jazz scene into the punk rock scene. And it kind of speaks to the way this community has evolved and the people that have kept downtown and going, even through some of the times like the 80s and 90s, where people weren't coming downtown. Those Gen Xers were coming downtown and having punk rock shows. So there's a straight line through all of that, and it's a line where racial lines are blurred, and people are just about community and about listening to music. And I guess that's a, I don't know. I probably rambled a lot there, but
No, absolutely not.
I think there's a nice tie into the community element of it and how it spanned generations and decades and race, and it's all about community and people coming together.
Absolutely. I've lived in bigger cities that I've had, great music experiences, but I think some of my favorite have been here. And I think that the community in Birmingham really plays a part. Like, who could say, like, you've seen Cigaros at Bottle Tree? Like such a tiny place, and people got.
I was there.
I did that. It was my birthday. It was amazing.
And then and obviously Cave Nine was a place where you would have 4 bands on a bill, and it would be a punk rock band, and then it would be like a shoegazy band,
Absolutely.
and it would be a hip hop act, and a metal act, just all thrown together on a bill, and everybody was there and having a good time, and not really into genre or anything. I mean,
right.
I guess the only thing that doesn't have a huge history here really is country music. But I think Americana has kind of become to kind of, the singer-songwriter Americana style has begun to find some footing here with some really talented artists that are doing that thing too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's kind of this weird not weird, but weird good, like non-pretentious vibe, I think I would call it, to
Right,
the
I agree. I
DIY
agree,
music
and
scene here. Yeah.
for sure, I totally agree. It's and I mean the scene as it is right now. There's one guy probably is in 5 bands right now. So, and it's kind of always been that way. But especially over the pandemic, people got bored and started making new projects, and now there's just like 900 guys that are in 12 bands or whatever, and it's fun. It's not pretentious, and it's very community spirited.
What did you learn in writing this book? Did you learn anything more about Birmingham or even yourself, like and you as a writer? And what advice would you give to other aspiring writers who were asking, like, how do I do this?
Um, I on a say negative on a little bit of a negative note. I found out that that older generation, that generation a little bit older than me, Gen X, they're real protective of their scene. They laid the groundwork for what happened down here and all of the things that have gone on in Birmingham really over the past 10 or 15 years. Um, and for all the right reasons, they don't really care to let anybody in, so to speak. But I got to know all those folks really well, and I'm grateful for the time that they gave me in order to get this thing done. I learned that you can find something to do out in this town at just about any hour. At least you could pre-pandemic. I don't know if you can now, but which is a weird thing. I mean, there's not a lot of towns in America that are like that. I mean, you got New York City and New Orleans, and how many other places can you find something going on at 4 or 5 a.m.? It's but you
Right.
can in Birmingham, somewhere. And generally, there's going to be music and booze involved, and there's some sort of weird grandfather law that we're told it happened that I don't know how to explain. But yeah, I mean, it's it's a city that is unlike anything around it. It's a city where something's always happening, and it's a city that I've probably been called to leave a few times, and I'd rather not because I enjoy Birmingham quite a bit. So I I hope to continue improving Birmingham and helping Birmingham and do the things that I can that are within my power, to sharing the stories of Birmingham, helping through the nonprofit work that I do. Yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be, and I'm grateful that life led me here 15, 16 years ago.
What advice would you give to young kids or even an adult who wants to become a music journalist? Like, do you think that going beyond your connections that you had, like, are there any tips that you could give to any of our viewers who might be watching?
In 2021, my best advice to you would be to have a day job first, because, like I said earlier, it's not all journalism has found a spot where it's hard to make a living just off the journalism. I mean, certainly there are several people out there that can, but it's a one percenters type of club. So make sure that you're comfortable in whatever your living is, and whatever your make sure you've make sure you've got insurance and things like that. Make sure you're well taken care of. And then if you want to try such pursuits, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's something that you're going to have to approach as a hobby before you approach it as a career. And I've made money off of it, but obviously not enough to live. But make sure that you're doing it because it's something that you want to do, and not something because it's something that you think you can survive on. Don't throw everything else away to chase this dream in 2021. But if you can find a way, that you can be comfortable and you can still live out the hobby, and hopefully the hobby can turn into a career, then that's great. And that's basically been my approach the whole time. When I began, I started in radio here in town when radio was, massively huge and very profitable. And that afforded me opportunities to write sports first. And when I was writing sports first, I went
Cool.
across the aisle and asked some of the folks in the entertainment section over what was then the Birmingham News, if I could write music, and I was given the opportunity to go do that some. And so that just kind of continued on as part of my freelance work. I still did a lot of sports writing in my freelance work too. And that all continued on until the first book came out in 2015. And then, due to a million issues and pandemics and whatever else, we finally got this one out in 2020. So, just make sure you're grounded and make sure that you've got enough to put food on the table. Don't put all your eggs into one basket. But if you can turn a hobby, if you can turn a hobby into a career, by all means, go for it.
Well, I want to say congratulations to you for getting your book published and for doing anything in 2020, but especially something that's so awesome and, that we can have here at the library and in, the archives of Birmingham history in general. I think that's really cool. And I agree. Absolutely. You're right. Like, especially in the arts, you have to be passionate about it or and definitely keep your day job for a while. Next question, I would really love to talk about Grace Klein Community, and if you could tell our viewers a little bit about that organization.
Yeah, a big part of what we do at Grace Klein is food rescue. We try to find food at grocery stores, at local restaurants, wherever that we can collect food that would otherwise go to waste, that we can save and we can give to people in need. We are able to take care of a lot of people. I think we donated $2.1 million worth of food to about 25,000 Birmingham families last year. The need grew considerably over 2020 during the pandemic, but we were able to somehow manage to keep up with it. But our thing is we're largely all about finding ways that anyone can give to help their neighbor here in Birmingham. If you can't give a financial donation, if you can give your own canned food drive at your place of work, or if you have a matching donation situation at whatever company you might work for, or if you have some furniture that you can donate, or if you are a business that has new clothing that you can donate, we can find ways that anybody can help anybody in this town. And that's sort of our goal. And my part in that is trying to kind of facilitate connecting people to the people that they can help. So you can learn about what we do at feedbhm.org, feedbhm.org. You can find out ways to donate, ways to volunteer. Even if it's just your time that you're able to give to help someone, we'd be more than happy to have it, and happy to have you on board, whoever you might be.
Is there anything specific that y'all are lacking right now that do you need more canned goods at the moment? I know during the winter, usually, places will need more jackets. Is there more of a need for anything in particular with spring coming up?
We kind of take on a theme every month. Right now, March has just gotten here, and we're now in our March for Hunger. We don't have any specific needs. Like I said, our main thing is that whatever you have to give, we'll find a way to use it. But definitely food is a good way. Definitely, if you are watching this and you own a restaurant or small business that has leftovers that you aren't going to use, by all means, let us know and we'll figure out a way to get them, and we'll figure out a way to get them to somebody that needs them. We ideally just want to keep everybody fed, and there's so many kids, especially with schools being shut down and lunchrooms being shut down. There's so many kids that go without sometimes, and our goal is just to make sure that doesn't happen.
Well, thank you for the work that you're doing, and it was just an honor and pleasure to have you here to be part of our community series. And for all of our viewers, you can check out Blake's book. It's here at the library. We have a couple copies, and I highly recommend it. And thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. I'm really grateful that you asked me to come on.
Oh, yeah, of course. See you later.
Bye.